What's up, everybody? Welcome to Everything Real Estate Podcast, episode 28. We have Lisa Moore. She's going to be teaching us about house hacking. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Lisa?
Yeah, my name is Lisa Moore. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. Grew up in Massachusetts. I started investing in 2017, buying my first primary as a house hack, and we now have over 200 doors between LP syndications and ones that we own ourselves between my husband and I. We've got properties in Utah, Colorado, and Raleigh, North Carolina. And now we are focusing just on the Utah market, up to 50 unit assets, multifamily. We do long-term rentals, buy and hold.
Love it. Can you explain what house hacking is and how you got involved in it?
Yeah, so house hacking is basically just when you're renting out a section of your home. So I got started in it when I moved to Utah in 2016. I knew that I wanted to buy a house. So the first year living here, I was just kind of exploring, figuring out exactly where I wanted to live. And I knew that when I bought a house, I knew that I wanted to rent part of it. It wasn't called hacking back then. And this is also back when Airbnb was people just renting bedrooms out of their house, not the big fancy experiences and stuff that you have to do today to be really successful in Airbnb and short-term rentals. But I knew that I wanted to short-term rent one of the bedrooms in the house that I bought to help offset just some of my costs and live for as cheap as possible, but be able to own a home. So that was a priority for me when I was looking for a house. I knew I would house hack it, and I wanted to do the short term so I could block it off. So when I had family and friends coming to visit, I could block that time off and not have any guests in my house. So it worked out for me. It was great.
That's awesome. What inspired you to start house hacking, and how has it impacted your financial situation?
The big motivator really was the financial. As I said, I wanted to live for as cheap as possible. I knew I wanted to get into real estate and I wanted to start buying properties. My goal was buy a property, live in it for a year or two, move out, rent it, buy another one, and kind of just keep building from there. We've house hacked between my husband and I. He's house hacked multiple properties that he's owned. We still house hack to this day. We rent out our basement. It pays for I think it's about 93% of all of our living expenses, housing related, so our mortgage, utilities, all that stuff. So it's what's allowed us to really escalate and grow as much as we did. We bought, I think it was six properties within like a 2.5 year span, house hacking some of those. And that's what allowed us to keep growing and getting the financing on those. It's going to be better financing with the primary residence and stuff. So financially, it has just helped us immensely. Your living expenses is typically one of your most expensive items. So any way that we can reduce that, it's been a big game changer for us.
Love it. Love it. What are the key benefits and challenges of house hacking compared to the traditional route?
So it definitely, people are always worried about doing it because of, becoming a landlord and having to have tenants and things like that. So making sure you know how you want a house hack. Some people don't want to share any space. So they want to find a house that has a separate in-law apartment, or they're buying a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex and house hacking. I know people that purposely are buying 4, 5, 6 bedroom homes that are nice big homes, and they're renting each bedroom because they want the big house, they want the space and things like that, but they don't have to pay for it, and they have no issue renting to individuals by the bedroom. When I first moved to Salt Lake, that's actually what I did. I found an Airbnb. She had I think it was a 6 bedroom house. She had her bedroom. She had one bedroom that was a long-term rental. The rest of them, she short-term rented all of them. And she made money. I mean, she had this, beautiful house in the Sugar House area, and she made money off of it. So the tenants are definitely always what everyone's worried about, but I never had an issue when we were short-term renting, like the bedroom within our house. And you also get to choose who you're renting to. So when you are looking for a tenant, if it's a long-term tenant, like you're meeting them and you're talking to them. And if you just don't get a good vibe with them. Like, it's your home. So yes, there's certain legalities that you do have to be careful of and discrimination stuff. But ultimately, like, if you meet somebody and you just don't seem to jive with them, or you don't think they'd be a good fit for living at your house, like, that's your home. So you have full control over who that is. So I think that's something that a lot of people, they get worried about tenants, but also may not really realize, like, hey, like, you have full control over who is living there. So you're in an apartment building, you have no control over who's next to you, above you, below you. You're just hoping that they're quiet and not going to keep you up all night.
Right. What type of software do you use for background checks and stuff for your
Uh,
tenants?
Zillow. So Zillow has the tenant goes on. So you do have to have it listed on Zillow to be able to use their background checks, but they'll go through and they'll pull the background check, a credit check, and within Utah, we're part of what's called the Good Landlord Program. And they have specific requirements, and we would check with the Good Landlord Program. We're like, hey, does Zillow meet all the requirements that Utah has? And they said, yep, the Zillow background check. So the tenant goes on, they pay for it. So it's not like you're having to worry about paying for it and getting reimbursed or anything like that. You just tell the tenant, like, here's the link for the application. They go on, they fill all their information out, and then you get the information within Zillow, so you can see their background, you can see their credit check, and make sure that who you're renting to is who they say they are, and they're safe and don't have a criminal record, or at least if they do, you know what it is, and you're fully aware of who's coming into your home.
What would be like no goes for you after you get that back? What would make you be like, no, I'm not going to rent it to them?
I mean, for us personally, in our home, we probably wouldn't rent to any felon or anyone that has, any sort of record, speeding tickets, whatever. But, if somebody's been charged with breaking and entering or theft or assault or something like that, for us, we don't want that risk. There's definitely people who that won't bother them, or maybe they are someone that has a record themselves and they're looking to do outreach for people that are coming out of prison and things like that. For us personally, we do not rent to people that would have a criminal background in our own home.
That
So
makes sense. How did you finance your first property to house hack? How's the financing part work?
we just went conventionally, and I was able, and this was, as I said, back in 2017, my house, I was able to get into it for a few $1,000s down because the different programs that they had and the lender credits and things like that. When we first started, and even though I was going to rent it, they wouldn't allow me to use any potential income I have from that to qualify. I didn't need that to qualify, but at the time they would not have let us do that. Now, because we have the history of doing that, when we bought a triplex, like, that's obviously they're going to use the income from the other units. And I also have my real estate license here in Utah, and I actually am currently right now helping a buyer, and she is buying it with her boyfriend, but they're going to consider his rent. So it's sort of like a house hack. Obviously, it's a couple, so they live together, but they're allowing her to use that income. So depending the lender, and now that the short-term rentals and the house hacking has become more popular, there are more lenders that are being more willing. They may not use 100%. So if you say, hey, I can get $1,000 a month renting this out, they may say, look, we're going to use 50 or 60 or 70%. But there are more lenders now that we have found that are being more open to using rents and things like that from house hacking, just because it's becoming such a popular thing.
Right. What type of properties are best suited for that?
Really any property. It really depends what you're looking for. For somebody that doesn't want to share any space, and that's, my husband and I now, we don't want to share any interior space. We don't want to have to worry about sharing a kitchen or sharing laundry or bathrooms or anything like that. So for us, with my first house, it's changed each one. My first house, I knew that I was renting just a bedroom, so I was sharing a kitchen and a bathrooms and laundry and all that stuff. But I was single. It didn't matter as much. I wasn't going to be doing it full time. And the money for me, it was well worth that income that I was getting to do that. When my husband and I were shopping for a house, we wanted a separate unit. So whether that was a duplex or a mother-in-law, we wanted something that had a separate entrance, that didn't have any shared space. So it's really just what you're looking for and what your goals are. I mean, and we've house hacked a triplex. And they've just recently changed where you can buy a 2 to 4 unit property with 5% down, where we didn't intend on house hacking again. We kind of were like, oh man, we could buy a fourplex with only 5% down. Like, maybe we will just one more time if we find the right one. So it's really knowing what you're looking for. Like I said, I know people that purposely buy 4 or 5 bedroom houses so they can rent each bedroom. I know people that are buying just single family homes, building out the basements, adding separate units and separate entrances into there. So it's really deciding what your goals are, what you're looking for, and it's really easy. I mean, you can really house hack any property. It's just knowing what you want and knowing what your ultimate goals are for house hacking.
How do you find the right location or neighborhood?
For us, because we were never concerned on being able to find a renter, Salt Lake it's a really strong rental and real estate market. So we knew pretty much anywhere we lived, we'd be able to rent out whatever it was, if it was an ADU, basement, mother-in-law, whatever it is. So we looked for where we personally wanted to live. And if we want to live in this neighborhood, then other people are going to want to live in the neighborhood. And Salt Lake is such a great area. There's really not any horrible areas. So we're in a fortunate position where you can kind of live anywhere within Salt Lake, and you're going to be able to find renters. You're going to be able to find people that are willing to rent your bedroom or basement or whatever it may be. So other areas you definitely would want to think of. If you're really far away, if you're on the outskirts of town and you're living 30 minutes away from the city, like if everyone works in the city, or how many people are going to want to commute that far? What's the type of neighborhood you live in? What is the access to grocery stores and things like that? People do typically want to live close to the grocery stores, to things to do, to restaurants. So that's definitely a factor when you're looking, and just keeping in mind, are you in the middle of nowhere? Yes, you might be able to rent to that, but if you're an hour drive to the closest grocery store, will you be able to find a renter? Maybe, but it could take you months. So just like sort of any rental, like what are you near and what's close by, and how many people are going to want to live in that area. So
Right. What tips do you have for managing tenants, and what software do you use? Do you use any like software for automation or anything?
yeah, so we do have a property manager for all of our properties, except for we have one in Colorado that we still manage, and then our basement. We want full control of that because it's our house. We see them, walking outside, and just we want control over who's in our basement. We do use a software called Rent Ready, and that's been good. So they can make their payments through that, communication through that. Um, but you also don't, and that's another thing where you don't have to manage the tenant. Like if that to you is just this daunting thing and something that you are so against and just don't want to do, then you can, like, we could have a property manager manage our basement, but like we choose to do it ourselves. But if you're somebody that likes the idea of it, but not of having that, because also some people get concerned that they know it's your house and they may try and take advantage or things like that. So it could be better if you're someone that has a hard time setting boundaries and telling somebody no, or calling somebody out on something. It might be better for you to just be like, yeah, I just rent this house too, like property management company, and not let them know that you are the owner. So if you are interested in house hacking, you do still have that option. Obviously, if it's a bedroom within your house, that's different. But if it's a duplex, triplex, fourplex, ADU, separate apartment, then you could definitely hire somebody. But yeah, programs like Rent Ready make it pretty easy and seamless to have the tenant and collecting rent and things like that. So
Nice. I'm about to check that out. I've never heard of that one yet.
yeah.
How do you handle like property maintenance and repairs when you're living on site?
So we have ours, and one of the reasons we liked the house that we bought was we didn't want to have to share a yard. So we were able to, the entrance to the basement apartment is in the back, but we were able to build a fence. So when the tenants come in, they enter on one side of the house, our entrance is on the other side of the house. And when they're walking into their place, it's just like any other neighbor on the side of a fence. Like you can hear them if we're outside, we might be able to hear them talking as they're walking into the house, but it's on the other side of a fence. So we have our own private yard. They're not allowed to use it, but they also have their own little private yard. They're responsible for their section of the yard, but the rest of it is we take care of. So like our front yard, that is sort of like the shared space. We maintain that and take care of it. So and you can always be a little different with that, but for us, it's also our house and where we live. And a lot of tenants may say they like yard work or that they want a yard, but may not put as much effort into maintaining a yard as we would like. So for us, we do maintain our yard. Tenants are only responsible for their little section of yard. The rest of it is all on us. And if there's any maintenance issues, they message us, we take care of them, and things like that. So we're
Nice.
definitely more involved with everything on this property because it's our house than any of our other rentals.
Right. It seems more like attached to it kind of more than the other ones.
Yes. Yeah. When you're living here, it's a lot different. So, we definitely want to make sure that it stays nice and there's any issues and things like that. I mean, same with our rentals, but we'd much rather have somebody else maintain our rentals. Our house, we definitely have full control over everything that goes on.
So when you're underwriting the property for the house hacking, how do you ensure the positive cash flow?
So for us, we actually don't care if it's a positive cash flow. We look at it as we need a place to live. Everyone needs a place to live. Your housing is typically one of your most, if not the most expensive thing that you have. Most people are spending a third to half of their income a month on their housing. So when we looked at house hacking, we weren't necessarily looking like, okay, this is going to cost us $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month to live here. I need to make sure I can rent it for at least that. I look at it as, okay, if I'm going to rent an apartment, like when I first moved to Salt Lake, I was paying right around $1,200 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment. So the way I looked at it is like, okay, I'm renting for $1,200. If I can buy a house and still pay that, or even pay a little less, like to me, that's a win, because now I own that house. That's mine. I'm growing that equity and I'm paying the same amount that I was when I had an apartment. So it really depends on what you're going for. Most people that I know that are house hacking, they're doing it to lower their expenses, not necessarily to make money on it. But I absolutely know people that do make money on it. But to me, I look at it as I just want to reduce my living expenses. And where we're living now, our 93% of our expenses are covered by our tenants. It's like you can't live for much cheaper than that. We have a nice house,
Right.
a nice neighborhood, a beautiful yard. So for us, we'd much rather have a house and house hack it and pay less than have an apartment where we're not building any equity and we don't own that asset.
Right. But what are the most common, like the top 5 common mistakes you see new hackers making, and how could they be avoided?
Ooh, mistakes that they make. I think one is definitely the fear of the tenants, thinking that you just rarely do people share good stories like of anything. People are much more apt to tell you the horrible experience they had at a restaurant or at a store, as opposed to they could have gone into 15 other restaurants and had amazing experiences, but the one time they had a bad experience is the one they're going to share. It's the same with tenants. Rarely do you hear people talking about how great their tenants are, because people just don't share that. People just tend to share the stories of the issues and things like that. So I think thinking that they have to deal with these bad tenants and they're going to have these issues, is definitely one thing. What are some other mistakes? Just not screening tenants and having boundaries. So if you're renting, whether it's a separate apartment, a basement apartment, an ADU, or renting within your house, not having boundaries, especially if you're renting to friends. A lot of people are like, hey, yeah, like I'm going to buy this house and rent the bedrooms to my friends. You need to have boundaries. If they're not paying rent, you need to be able to tell them, like, you got until, this day of the month, you're getting a notice on this day, and really just setting those boundaries. Or if you're in a shared space where you're renting a bedroom, being very clear on like who's responsible for cleaning things, who's responsible for cleaning stuff up. making sure people clean up after themselves. I think boundaries, and a lot of people have a hard time calling people out and telling them like, hey, like you left this in the sink, please come clean this, or please make sure you clean this, or you haven't paid your rent, whatever it is. So I think if you start off with very strong boundaries and very clear on what the expectations are, I think that's a good way to set a better foundation. But you do want to be careful renting to friends and people you know, because they may think that they can get away with things because
Try
you're
to take
friends.
advantage of you and stuff, right?
Yeah, and not even necessarily like take advantage of like essentially that is what they're doing. That can be they could be doing it that way, but not thinking of it as like, oh, I'm gonna try and take advantage, but just like they're fine. Like I can pay them next week, or I can take care of that later. Like when you have that more casual relationship, it can lead to some difficulties if you're sharing space and renting to friends.
How's house hacking evolved over the years, and where do you see it going in like the future?
I definitely do not see it going away anytime soon. Like I said, my husband started doing it back in '04. When I did in 2017, I still didn't know the term house hacking. I don't know if that was really a coined term yet. But if anything, I think it's just going to continue to become more and more popular because housing is getting more and more expensive. And you look at Salt Lake specifically, that's the only market we focus on. Other cities, I'm sure, are doing similar things, but allowing ADUs. So if you have the space, whether that's above a garage or a larger backyard, and you could build something, it's becoming more and more popular and just something that more people are looking to do. I remember when we were looking for the house we live in now, we wanted to find something with a mother-in-law apartment or an ADU, and it was really like hard to find. So we just had to create it ourselves. Where now we're looking for another house where we prefer to not have an apartment within the main house. And it seems like most of the houses we are looking at have that now because people are just looking for a way to generate income, cut down their costs because it is expensive. And to buy, so many people talk about how it's difficult to buy a home and it's unaffordable anymore. Well, I talk to people, it's like, if you're willing to do the sacrifices in house hack, like that's how I got started. Like so many people I know, I even talked to one of my other friends. She bought a house and she's like, it didn't dawn on me until like watching and following you. She goes, I house hacked when I first bought my house, and that was 30 years ago. And that was the only way that I could afford it. And I was still had a good job. So, it's one of those things that it's kind of always been there, but I don't see it going anywhere. If anything, as I said, I think it's just going to keep growing and becoming more popular as housing does get more expensive. And with the ADUs and things like that, it definitely will be around, I think, for the foreseeable future and being a larger part of more people of what they do when they're trying to buy their first home, for sure.
How did you find your homes? Like, do you use like prop stream or do you go with an agent or how's that process work?
So we have found ours a mix of on-market deals and then just networking and talking to neighbors and friends and things like that. When if you're looking for something really specific, or if you're looking for more of an investment style, then yeah, the prop streams and Bachelors and those type services where you can find the homes. I think that's more investor focused, where if you're not an investor and you're like, dude, I'm paying $2,500 a month for my apartment, I'd rather be putting that towards a house, but I have zero desire to have to fix a place up. Like, I just want to buy a house that I can rent out. The MLS is really probably going to be your best bet, or networking with investors and telling them, like, this is what I'm looking for, but it needs to be turnkey. So if you find it, like you do the flipping and updating of it, I'll buy it from you. But I think it really depends on the person. Most people are probably wanting to buy something turnkey. They're not looking to have to be doing any major remodel or changes or anything like that to the house. So, and now, like I said, there's so many, it's almost impossible to not find a house that has a mother-in-law apartment in it. Like, you go on and you look of almost any price range and you will find houses that have mother-in-law apartments. So the MLS is definitely a great place to start, for sure.
Love it. Can you share a challenging experience you had house hacking at the beginning stages of doing it?
Yeah. So when I first started, and as I said, And I had a small house. Like all that I could afford was a small 2-bed, 1-bath house. It was about 770 square feet. So I was sharing, we had 1 bathroom. So I was sharing that with my guest, which never was actually that big of a deal. But the one issue, and I did everything through Airbnb. And so I had a guest, and they know that it's your own home. Like you say that within the, my listing, it was like, this is my home. We will be sharing a bathroom and a kitchen and all the space. Like you'll have your own bedroom, but everything else is shared. And I walked into my house, and there is an older gentleman there with 2 kids, and like every pot and pan in my kitchen. And I had a tiny kitchen, like every pot and pan was out, and they were cooking and da-da-da. And I just walked in, and I was like, because in my listing, it was very specific, no kids. It's a small space. It's not kid friendly. I had breakable things, so I didn't want kids in there. And I just walked in and was like, holy crap. I'm like, what is going on? And I asked him, I said, like, can I talk to you? I said, are they just here, like, just for dinner? He's like, no, they're staying with me while I'm here. I'm like, my listing says no kids. I said, you did 1 person. I said, this is not, and he's only staying for, I think it was 2 nights. I said, this was not a kid-friendly house. You said it was just you, blah, blah, blah. And, we kind of talked it out. The kids that night, they were very well behaved. And I was like, look, and I'm like, I'll be nice. I'll let them stay. I was like, but I'm charging you for them. He's like, but they're only kids. I go, exactly. I said, you're lucky I don't charge you double what you're paying right now to bring 2 kids into this house. And so that was just people not understanding. They're like, it's just kids. Like, what's the big deal? So that was the one of probably the biggest. And luckily I could talk it out through them. And luckily the kids were well behaved. If they were like wild, yelling, screaming kids, I'd have been like, no way. Like, you got to go. This is against my house rules. This is not allowed. But yeah, sometimes you'll have guests do unexpected things. But
Can you use creative finance to house hack, or it's got to be the traditional route?
oh, you can definitely use creative finance. Absolutely. I mean, buying something, whether that's buying it seller finance or subject to, absolutely. The seller, the creative finance, that's more just, how you're acquiring it and how you're going to pay for it. So we're actually looking at a primary residence now that would be an assumable loan or subject to, depending which rate it goes, plus seller finance. And they have an area in the back that we would build a little ADU on. And our preference is to not house hack, but as long as we're not sharing any walls, where this is such a big yard, like we could build a little ADU. So, that's when it may be a potential hybrid subject to seller finance. Plus we'd be building a little ADU that we can house hack.
Is there a way to, let's say, because I know you do multifamily also, is there a way you can house hack, live in an apartment, and rent the other ones out?
Yeah, up to 4 units. So we house hacked a triplex. The house that we are living in now, we moved out of this and moved into a tiny little 1-bedroom apartment about 45 minutes north of here. And that was actually the house we bought that allowed me to be able to quit my W-2. But yeah, up to 2, 3, 4 units, you can house hack. Once you get to 5 units or more, it becomes commercial. So that could you still house hack it? Yes, but you're losing all the benefits of kind of the primary residence because that becomes commercial. 5 to 10 units, some lenders, there's kind of a gray area, but I'm yet to meet a lender that if it's 5 units or more would give any sort of benefit of it being a primary residence. So 2, 3, and 4 units, absolutely. Especially now, as I mentioned earlier, you can buy a 2, 3, or 4 unit with 5% down if you're house hacking. So you can house hack that and be able to get into a 4-plex. I mean, if I could go back to 20-year-old me, I'd be buying a 4-plex, house hacking it, and every year or two moving. And you do that for 10 years. By the time you're early 30s, you've got 4, 5, 6 properties that have all been bought with primary, your mortgage being like your primary residence. So you're getting better interest rates, you're getting a better down payment. So yeah, you can definitely house hack the 2, 3, and 4 unit assets for sure.
What is your favorite 5 books that changed your life?
Ooh, 5 of them. The Miracle Morning was one that I really liked. That I don't implement. I don't have a very strict like morning ritual, but there's definitely things from that I have taken and implemented that have been very helpful. Gap in the gain was another kind of mindset one that was just how you look at things. And, most people, as you're an entrepreneur and you're growing a business, your goal for, I want my business to get to $1 million. But then you get to 800,000. Well, now that $1 million goal is like, well, now it's 2 million. So it's like your goalpost is always moving. So sometimes you feel like you're never achieving your goals, but then you take a second and look at where you were 1 year ago to 5 years ago. So that was a good one. I just finished reading 10X is easier than 2X. That was a good one as far as like if you're looking to grow a business and how you look at that and things like that. So that was another good one. I'm the best ever, because I'm multifamily. I think it's the best ever real estate syndication book or best ever multifamily syndication book. Can't remember the exact. It's kind of a long title.
I think I have that one. 1 second.
Yeah, it's part of the best ever. Joe Fairless.
Wait, it's not showing because wait. Okay, I gotta switch my background. Let me see how I can do this. Background. None. Okay. This one?
Yeah, that one. Yep.
Perfect.
Fearless. Yeah, that's a really good book on learning about syndications. I really enjoyed my background's financial analysis, so of course I like numbers and stuff. Real estate by the numbers was another really good one. If you're looking to learn about underwriting and analyzing deals, that's a very good one. How many was that? Is that 4 or 5? Trying to think of another one that's Be Seen by Jen Gottlieb. I read that one recently. So one thing that we're looking to do is kind of grow our social media more and, connect and reach more people for whether that's just education, investors, finding deals, kind of all of the above. She has a really good book, Be Seen, that is some talking of social media, but just kind of putting yourself out there and things like that. So those are probably some of the books the ones that come to mind that I've read that I've really liked.
What are you using for social media management, like scheduling your post or analyzing everything?
So I actually am new to the whole, like Facebook came out when I was in college, not to date myself, but that was, back when you needed, first you had to be an Ivy League student, and then you had to have an EDU an email. So that's when I had joined, when I had an EDU email. So I've had a Facebook forever, but as far as actively really trying to interact on it and stuff like that, I just started probably last fall. And we're in process of implementing a new CRM system that actually does the scheduling for us. So, we'll be spending like a day or two and just creating a lot of content all in 1 or 2 days, and then having a VA go through and create videos. And then my new CRM will be able to, you can go in and schedule, post to all social media, and they'll be able to schedule. So you can schedule out days, weeks, months ahead of time, and then not have to worry about making posts every day or however often you want to. So the CRM that we just signed up for is called REI Doc, DOC. So we'll be using that to plan out
the tool I use right now for social media. It's this one right here. I'm about to try to post it in there. Metricool.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
You can analyze everything. You can message all the people in one spot, and you can schedule it. You can run your Facebook ads on there and do everything in one spot. And it's only $20 a month. And for $20, you get to make 2,000 posts a month. So that's a lot.
Wow, that is a lot. Yeah, I have to write that one down. Yeah.
Yeah, Metricool is pretty good. So another question I had for you is, 1 second. What are the tax implications for like house hacking? Like how do you do that?
So I guess legally, any money that you do bring in, you should declare, even if and with Airbnb now, like if you're doing it through a platform like Airbnb or Furnish Finder or VRBO, like some of those it's not the same in every state, but a lot of those, everything's kind of managed through there. And in some cases, depending what state you're in, they'll actually even pay state taxes for you. But at the end of the year, like they will send you the tax form that you need that you can declare that income on. Where most people are using that, you're going to be declaring it. So you are going to have that income. So that will potentially be more taxes you have to pay. But you can also now write more stuff off. Like you now have a business. So you need your cell phone to communicate with your tenants. Your cell phone's now a business write-off. You can, when you're doing your taxes, you'll be able to write off part of your house because that is used for business. If you're maintaining the yard and the house and things like that, like that's all stuff that you can now write off because it's a business. So for people that have, high incomes or just want to pay less taxes, yes, you are getting more income because of that. But when you look at the benefits of what you can write off in your taxes, and obviously I'm not a CPA, consult your CPA, but you do have that ability now that you are being a business and functioning as a business to have those write-offs to offset that income. So for me, when I first started, it didn't, if anything, it helped me pay less taxes because I had those write-offs.
How's your policies on pet smoking and other restrictions like that?
So for house hacking, we do not, definitely no smoking. If they want to smoke outside, they're not allowed to do it anywhere close to the house. I despise cigarette smoking, so I do not want to be sitting in my backyard and smelling cigarette smoke. So definitely not in the house. And like anything, I mean, most people at this point have probably seen pictures of a house where somebody's smoking inside and just that yellowy orangey that it just turns everything. Like most people don't smoke inside. Most apartments don't allow it, so we definitely don't allow the smoking inside. And pets, we don't allow dogs. We had a dog. We had to put him down a couple years ago, and we didn't want any pets at that time. We didn't want our dog up here, like being able to smell another pet and always being like, where is it? What's that animal? Where are they? We don't have a dog now, so our tenants currently do have a cat. But that's another nice thing that is good with house hacking, and you're in full control. So if you don't want any pets, you don't have to have any pets. We probably still won't allow dogs. But if somebody has a cat and they take care of it and stuff, then right now we're good with people having cats. But for a while we did not allow any pets when we had a dog.
Right. Nice. Like, so when it comes to like utilities, do you pay the utilities, or is there a way you can split between the tenants, or how does that work?
So for the house that we live in now, in my first house, there wasn't any way to split the utilities. So when we would, their rent, and there's two trains of thought. So for even numbers, if you're like, okay, your rent's $1,000 and utilities are 100. So you can split it up, or you can just say like you're $1,100 all in. You'll see, and this is the same in many apartments too. Most of the time they're doing the utilities separate, because if I have my rent at 1,000, utilities at 100, and my utilities are jacked up and they make big increases, or the people downstairs are running a bunch of stuff, and I know that my electric bill is always $100 a month, and this new tenant moves in and now it's 200, I can be like, hey, like, what are you doing down there? So you can have more flexibility of changing your utilities and passing that on. There are services that can come in and split things, your water mainly, but unless if you have separate electric meters and separate gas meters and water meters and stuff, if you have a single family home, then every time, like, we look and see what our utilities are, and pending the situation, like the house we're in now, they have just as much space as we have. We're 50-50. So, they pay almost 50% of the utilities. So that's kind of like built into ours, but we just keep track of what our utilities are and then charge those to them. But there's no way for us to have them like call up the electric company and put a meter in their name, because there's only one meter to the house. Where if you have a duplex, triplex, or fourplex and they have separate meters, yeah, those people, they put it in their name and they take care of it, and you don't have to worry about it. And the internet,
Right.
that's another thing. Internet is something, we didn't want our tenants to have to deal with getting the wires run or whatever they have to do to get internet. So like we pay for internet, we give them access to our Wi-Fi, And, we've got Google Fiber, and, like everyone, I've got multiple devices. My husband has multiple devices. I can see what devices, I mean, there's probably 15, 20 devices connected to our Wi-Fi, and Google Fiber is great. We've never had any issues. So that's another, the internet, because some places it would be difficult to get their own separate internet. So we just provide that as well. So there's no utilities that they have to worry about getting separately. We don't do TV, so if they wanted TV, that would be on them. But nowadays, so many people just have Amazon Prime, or we don't have any TV, so I don't even know what other ones there are, Hulu or Roku or whatever it is. So that's the only utility or the only expense that would be on them, would be any sort of TV.
Awesome. Like, how important do you feel it is to have a good relationship with the other people that are there in your house, or when you're house hacking?
I mean, you definitely want to make sure that, you're friendly and stuff. You don't have to be best buds and hanging out. We have, there's a couple that lives in our basement before that, when we met them, they were, one of the reasons we had them move in was because they were just a cool couple and we liked them. And, if we had people over, we'd often like shoot them a text and, hey, we're having people over, come hang out. The two girls that live down there now, we do the same. They're cool and stuff. So is that required? No, because for us in our situation, we're not sharing any space. So to me, when you're not sharing space, it's not as important on whether you're friends or not, as long as there's not any like hostility or issues or things like that. But, most of the time people are kind of doing their own thing. But if you're sharing space, that's where it's going to be a little more important. You don't have to be buddy buddy, but you do have to have that level of like respect and communication. So if there is an issue, you can talk it out, you can address it and things like that. But you don't have to have, this best friend and you're hanging out all the time and let's do dinner together. Even if you are just renting a bedroom, they just may want to hang out and chill in their bedroom and read or watch TV or whatever it is. So a mutual respect, but I don't think you have to worry about like becoming best friends with whoever is renting your house.
What happens if there's a HOA? Does that change anything?
That would depend on the HOA. It could. Some HOAs won't allow you to rent. Sometimes there can be a way around it that, okay, well, I'm not renting it. This is just a roommate, and they're helping me pay expenses. So sometimes there can be ways around it. Sometimes the HOAs are very strict, and it's, this is what it is. Most of the time, that's not the situation. But you would, if you are looking to buy a place in an HOA, you also want to think about, if my plan is to own something for a year or two and then move and buy something else and keep house hacking, there are definitely HOAs that will restrict you renting it if you don't live there. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. If you are buying in an HOA and your plan is to move every couple of years or every year, and you want to rent out that place and keep it, definitely check with your potential HOA, if they allow rentals, because that's not that uncommon for an HOA to say, no, it has to be owner occupied, no rentals allowed, because they don't want it to turn into a rental type facility. Like, very generally speaking, people are going to take better care of places they own and that are theirs than renters do. So it's not uncommon for HOAs to restrict rentals, and it has to be owner occupied. But most will allow you to have roommates and rent it out. You may have to say, like, I'm not renting it, it's just a roommate and they're, helping me pay for expenses, which is collecting rent, but the way you word it can change things. So, but
Right. How do you handle late payments or evictions?
so when we first get it, and this is whether it was a house hacking or at one of our investment properties, when somebody first moves in, we are very like, this is when rent is due. There are no exceptions. If you're going to be late, we'll give you a notice. You'll move out. But you definitely need to be very strict and very on the ball with that the first 5, 6, 8 months that somebody is living there. If you start to give them some leeway, if the first month you're like, can I get it to you next week? And you're like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, what do they say? You give them an inch, they take a mile, or whatever that saying is. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of times they'll just keep pushing that out and stuff. So we're very strict the first few months, really the first year, until that they've proven to us that like they are reliable. We don't have to worry about it. And then if something comes up, like we've definitely had issues where tenants can't pay anymore, they're having problems. We avoid evictions at all costs. So my husband has been a landlord since 2004. I've been a landlord since 2017. You know, hundreds of tenants, and in the 20 years that he's been doing it and the time that I've been doing it, we've had to evict one person, and that was actually just last year. 99% of the time, how we handle it is if we have a tenant, whether it's house hacking or not, and they can't pay and they're late, we'll get on the phone and be like, look at what's going on. Why are you late? What's happening? And, you know, if they tell us, look at, we just lost, you know, we had a tenant, like we just lost he just lost his job. He was in construction. He busted his knee. He had to have surgery. Like he had to quit. Like we're already in process of finding something. He should have a new job within a month. Here's our payment plan. Here's what he'll be making. And here's when we'll be caught up. We're like, okay, well, as long as you can hit these dates, we'll work with you. They've been good tenants. They've been there for a while. Never had an issue with them. We're willing to work with them. Where we've had other ones where it's a young couple and they both lost their job and they're like, we have no idea how we're going to get caught up. Like, we don't know what to do. We feel bad, blah, blah, blah. But as long as people are communicating with us and talking with us, like, you know, those people, it's like, look, if you have no idea how you're going to get caught up, like, we can't let you stay. And we don't want them, like, we'd much rather let them break their lease and move out than try and keep them in. Because if they can't pay now and they have no idea when they're going to have a job again or when they can get caught up, it's just going to keep, like, to me, I don't see a point. It doesn't do us any good and them any good to like keep building up more rent that they owe us, more fees on top of that. It's like they can't pay. So do we want people to be breaking their lease and moving out? Absolutely not. But we're also not going to make these people stay when they're very open with the communication, when they're talking to us, letting us know what's going on. Most of the time, we're letting them break their lease, letting them move out. Typically, we're keeping their security deposit because they owe us back rent. But 99% of the time, they're super thankful that they let us do that they let us break the lease and do that, because we're not going to get any money out of them, and it's not going to help them financially. It's not going to help us financially. Like, great, I can keep you in here for 3 months and evict you, which is going to cost me time. It's going to cost me money, and I'm not going to get anything from you. So for us, we'd much rather communicate with them, let them break their lease, let them move out, and let both parties move on and just call it a wash and be done with it.
Right. How do you stay updated on regulations and like the laws and stuff on it?
So we probably don't, having a property manager, we definitely don't follow it as much as we used to. But you know, you can look up, because every state is different, every county can be different, every town can be different. So you can have regulations by your city, state, county, all different ways of being regulated. So our property manager, definitely, they're always on top of that. But you can follow your local city. As I said, we're part of the Good Landlord program. So if there's law changes, we get communication through there. But also just going on and kind of regularly checking and looking on your state website, kind of just staying up with those things. They'll have, obviously, on the website rules and regulations and stuff like that. But just talking to a property manager as well, like, if you start networking with people or getting into investing or whatnot, or even if you're not and you just call a property manager, you're like, hey, I'm a house hacker. This issue came up. Like, do you have any idea like what the rules are? Some property management companies may not talk to you, but other ones, like, if they know the answer, most people are looking to help. But property managers are definitely the ones that should be staying up the most. So if we ever have questions, we just go to our property manager and ask them, like, anything changed or this happened? What's the regulations now? Things like that.
What are you trying to accomplish in 2024? What's your goals? Like, what are you trying to accomplish this year?
So our goals, we really want to scale and grow this year. So we're focusing just on the Utah market, purchasing up to 50 unit assets. We're really trying to focus on, the kind of boomer generation, people that are 60s, 70s, 80s, that are looking to get out of their rentals. Ideally, that they want to keep getting monthly cash flow, so they'll do seller financing, but not a requirement. But just that generation that's looking to sell, they've owned them for a long time, they're ready to retire. Buying those, being on podcasts, just getting out there more. And also I'd like to do some more speaking engagements. I've done some locally, but I'd like to be on the detailed goals is 24 podcasts. I didn't do that intentionally, 24 podcasts in 2024. I was just thinking 2 a month. And then my husband's like, oh, 24 and 24. I was like, oh yeah, look at that. So 24 podcasts and you get 5 speaking engagements. So if anyone out there has any meetups that they do, we love to travel, so I have no issue traveling to places. And then increasing our portfolio. We'd like to add at least 50 doors to our portfolio by the end of the year, which would more than double the local portfolio. We've got 18 doors in Utah now. We'd like to get 50 more doors in Utah. So
Love it. Well, I got an event I'm going to be doing every month in Texas, Houston, Texas. If you want to come to speak at that,
absolutely, yeah.
it'd be awesome. So, how
Yeah.
can people reach out to you, and what's your buy box so people can bring you value and bring you some deals?
As far as contacting, More Life Capital, or is our website morelifecapital.com, but Instagram, DM me on Instagram, More Doors with Lisa, spelled like my last name, Moore. So More Doors with Lisa is my Instagram. Definitely give me a follow and don't hesitate to shoot me a DM, ask me any questions. We love talking real estate. We are definitely obsessed with it. And as far as our buy box, up to 50 unit assets in Utah, we will buy in B and C class neighborhoods. The property can be value add. My husband's a general contractor and we do a lot of our own rehabs, or at least GC them. So they can be value adds, they can be turnkey, but essentially in that Utah market, up to 50 unit multifamily, even better if it's creative finance. That's obviously the way we'd love to buy and not have to deal with banks and all that. And it benefits the seller. So it can get them more money in their pocket. It can keep them with a stream of income every month, and it can help them save on taxes potentially. So
Tamisa's in Utah. That's one of my buddies.
Yeah, reach out to me on Instagram. Let's connect for sure.
Hey, I appreciate you coming on. It's been great. You've been dropping a lot of gems, and I appreciate you. I'll send you some details about the event in Houston when I get it all situated.
Yeah, definitely. I love that, Justin. And thanks for having me on. This is great.
Thank you. You have a good one.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.